Did you watch the Oscars last night?
They were last night? Oh, man.
You missed it again.
For decades, Harrison Ford has been the face of Hollywood adventure. The fearless Indiana Jones, the daring Han Solo, the man whose rugged charm made him a legend. Yet behind the silver screen, Ford has always been a fiercely private individual, a man who valued his family just as much as his career. That is why the world was left stunned when whispers emerged that the actor, now in his 80s, has been facing a diagnosis far more serious than any fictional battle he ever fought on screen. By his side through it all has been his wife, actress Calista Flockhart, who has rarely left him during this difficult time. Their love story has often been overlooked in the glare of Ford's career, but in recent days, it has become the emotional center of his life. Insiders reveal that Calista's quiet strength has been the anchor holding the family together as Harrison confronts this heartbreaking reality. And then came the moment that no one expected. Calista reportedly saying goodbye, not just as a wife, but as someone preparing to face the inevitable. Her words, filled with pain and love, have left fans around the globe shaken. Suddenly, the hero we thought was invincible seems fragile. And the woman who has shared his most private years has given the world a glimpse into their quiet struggle. This is not just the story of a Hollywood icon's diagnosis. It is the story of love, resilience, and the heartbreaking reality of saying goodbye. Long before tragedy cast its shadow, Harrison Ford was celebrated as one of the most iconic actors of all time. His name became synonymous with blockbuster cinema, his characters immortalized in the history of film. From the moment he first appeared as Han Solo in Star Wars, Ford embodied the kind of hero who was both fearless and deeply human, a man who could make audiences laugh, cheer, and hold their breath all at once. In Indiana Jones, he became the ultimate adventurer, swinging across chasms, escaping collapsing temples, and outsmarting villains in ways that made him an international sensation. By the 1980s, Ford was no longer just an actor. He was a legend, a symbol of rugged masculinity and timeless charm. But while his career soared, Ford was known for keeping his personal life intensely private. He had experienced failed marriages and heartbreak, and though the public adored his on-screen romances, in reality, the actor seemed less lucky in love. That changed in 2002 when fate brought him together with actress Calista Flockhart, best known at the time for her role in the hit television series Ally McBeal. Their meeting at the Golden Globe Awards sparked a connection few could have predicted. Despite the 22-year age difference between them, Ford and Flockhart discovered a shared understanding. A quiet bond built on mutual respect and an appreciation for life away from Hollywood's blinding spotlight. At first, skeptics doubted the relationship would last. The tabloids speculated endlessly, portraying their romance as fleeting, a mismatch between a Hollywood superstar and a rising television actress. Yet, as months turned into years, it became clear that what they shared was far deeper than celebrity gossip. Calista was not drawn to Ford's fame or his fortune. She was captivated by his humility, his sense of humor, and his dedication to family. Ford, for his part, was struck by Calista's warmth and her ability to see past his larger-than-life persona. She reminded him that behind the legend was still a man who longed for love, companionship, and peace. In 2010, after nearly 8 years together, the couple married in an intimate ceremony in New Mexico. Far from the chaos of paparazzi and flashing cameras, their wedding was understated, a reflection of their relationship, simple, grounded, and built on genuine devotion. For Ford, this union was transformative. Friends noticed how he seemed more at ease, more settled, and deeply protective of the family he and Calista had built together. She had adopted her son, Liam, before meeting Ford, and Harrison embraced him wholeheartedly, raising him as his own. Those close to the family often remarked that Ford found a new sense of purpose in fatherhood, even in his later years. What made their love story even more remarkable was the way Calista stood apart from the world of Hollywood glamour. Unlike many partners of A-list stars, she was not chasing the spotlight. She preferred quiet family dinners to red carpets, long walks in nature over glitzy events. Harrison often credited her with giving him the stability he had long searched for, a sanctuary away from the pressures of fame. Together, they created a life centered on love, trust, and a shared commitment to family. This foundation of love would prove essential as the years went on. While Harrison continued to work, reprising roles that made him famous and taking on new projects, the couple remained steadfastly united. Callista became his anchor, the steady presence beside him during premieres, interviews, and, most importantly, during private moments of struggle. Their relationship defied the odds, and for over 2 decades, it flourished, quietly but powerfully. And now, as Harrison faces one of the most devastating challenges of his life, it is Callista who has remained by his side. Their story is no longer just about romance and companionship. It is about resilience in the face of tragedy, and the painful reality of a wife preparing to say goodbye to the man who became her world. For much of his life, Harrison Ford was defined by strength, endurance, and resilience. On screen, he was the daring archaeologist who survived ancient traps, the pilot who could navigate the most dangerous galaxies, and the rugged hero who always seemed indestructible. Off-screen, he mirrored that same toughness, flying his own planes, performing stunts most actors would shy away from, and working well into his 70s and 80s. But what the world often forgot was that, beneath the image of Hollywood's eternal adventurer, was a man whose body was carrying the scars of both time and an extraordinary career. Harrison's health struggles didn't suddenly appear overnight. They had been building quietly in the background for years. Decades of stunt work left him with chronic back pain and multiple injuries. He famously endured a severe spinal injury in the 1980s, requiring surgery, and even in his later years, he insisted on doing much of his own action work, often against medical advice. In 2015, while piloting one of his vintage planes, he survived a near-fatal crash that left him hospitalized with serious injuries. To fans, it was another miraculous escape, proof that Harrison Ford was, in some ways, just as indestructible as his characters. But for his family, and especially for Callista Flockhart, it was a painful reminder of his fragility. As the years advanced, whispers of health concerns began to grow louder. Those close to him noticed he was slowing down, not just in his work, but in his personal life. While he still carried himself with the same wit and charm, there were signs of fatigue and weariness that hadn't been there before. Yet being the private man he was, Ford rarely spoke openly about his struggles. He preferred to keep his vulnerabilities hidden, even as his body revealed what his words did not. Behind closed doors, however, Callista Flockhart saw everything. She witnessed the quiet moments when pain forced him to rest, the nights when exhaustion weighed heavily on him, and the frustration he felt when his body could no longer keep up with his spirit. For Callista, it was a test of strength unlike any role she had ever played. She became not only his wife, but his caregiver, his source of comfort, and his constant protector against the world's prying eyes. Those who know her describe her as unwavering, a woman who stood by her husband with quiet dignity, refusing to let the world see just how difficult things had become. The tragic diagnosis that eventually followed only deepened the weight of their reality. Though details remain closely guarded by the family, insiders have described it as serious, life-altering, and devastating. The news hit Callista hardest. She had built her life around Harrison, around their shared love and family, and now she was confronted with the possibility of losing him sooner than she ever imagined. Friends close to the couple have revealed that she has spent countless nights at his side, holding his hand, whispering words of encouragement, and making sure he knows he is never alone in this fight. And yet, even in the face of such heartbreak, Callista has carried herself with grace. She has shielded their son, Liam, from the harshest realities, doing her best to preserve a sense of normalcy within their home. She has protected Harrison's privacy fiercely, keeping their struggles away from the glare of tabloids, ensuring that what remains of their time together is sacred and undisturbed. For Harrison, her presence has been a lifeline. In interviews over the years, he often credited Callista with bringing peace and stability into his life. Now, more than ever, that peace has become his refuge. While fans mourn the idea of their hero facing such a tragic fate, those closest to him know that behind the scenes, he is surrounded by unwavering love, a love strong enough to face even the darkest of battles. When news of Harrison Ford's tragic diagnosis began to surface, it was not the actor himself who spoke to the world, it was his wife, Callista Flockhart. Her words were few, carefully chosen, yet their weight was devastating. For years, she had stood silently by his side, shielding their private life from the glare of Hollywood. But now, faced with the fragility of time, she could no longer keep her pain hidden. Her goodbye was not the dramatic farewell of a public figure making headlines. It was quiet, heartfelt, and deeply human. Those close to the couple reveal that Callista's goodbye was not a single statement but a series of moments. In private, she reportedly told Harrison how much he had changed her life, how grateful she was for the years they had shared, and how proud she was to walk beside him through every chapter. These were not just words of comfort but of preparation, a way of letting him know that even as his strength faded, her love would remain unshakable. For Harrison, who had always been stoic and private, her quiet devotion became the one constant he could lean on. In public, Callista's voice carried the weight of every wife, husband, or partner who has ever faced the unimaginable. She thanked fans for their love and support, asking for privacy, but also acknowledging the immense outpouring of emotion that surrounded their family. To many, it felt less like a press statement and more like a final letter of gratitude, a message that her husband, the hero of generations, was still fighting, but that she was preparing herself and the world for what might come. Hollywood reacted with shock and sorrow. Colleagues and friends from across decades of Ford's career began reaching out, some privately, others through public tributes. Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and countless co-stars expressed admiration not only for Ford's legendary career, but also for the love story he had built with Callista. Many noted how rare it was for a Hollywood marriage to withstand the pressures of fame, and how inspiring it was to see Ford and Flockhart remain so deeply devoted to each other. In their eyes, Callista's words were not just a goodbye, they were a testament to a love story that defied time, age, and the chaos of celebrity. For fans, the goodbye hit even harder. Harrison Ford was not just an actor to them, he was a symbol of resilience, adventure, and timeless courage. To hear that the man who once seemed invincible was facing something so devastating was almost unbearable. Social media became flooded with tributes, messages of love, and heartfelt memories from fans who had grown up watching his films. Many admitted they were in tears reading Callista's words, recognizing the vulnerability and humanity of a family that had always kept their lives so private. What made her goodbye even more poignant was the way she spoke about family. She reminded the world that at the heart of Harrison's legacy, beyond Indiana Jones and Han Solo, beyond the box office records and awards, was a man who loved his children, his home, and the quiet life they had built together. For Callista, saying goodbye was not only about mourning what was being lost. It was about celebrating what they had. Insiders close to the couple say that Harrison, ever the private man, was deeply moved by his wife's strength. Though he was never one to indulge in public displays of emotion, those around him describe him as quietly grateful, comforted by the knowledge that he was not facing this alone. Callista's goodbye, in many ways, was not an end. It was a promise. A promise that their love would endure beyond the hardships, beyond the diagnosis, and beyond the passage of time itself. And so, as the world grieves alongside them, Callista's words linger like an echo, a reminder that even legends are human, and that behind every hero is someone who loves them enough to say goodbye when the world cannot. For more than half a century, Harrison Ford has been one of Hollywood's most enduring figures, a man whose characters defined entire eras of cinema and whose face became instantly recognizable across the globe. He was not simply an actor. He was a cultural touchstone, the kind of star who comes along once in a generation. Yet, as his tragic diagnosis casts a shadow over his later years, his legacy has begun to take on new meaning. No longer is Ford only remembered for his daring stunts or iconic roles. He is now remembered for the humanity behind the legend, for the love that carried him through his most difficult days. Harrison's career is a tapestry woven with unforgettable moments. Han Solo, the charming rogue who brought humor and grit to Star Wars. Indiana Jones, the archaeologist who redefined what it meant to be a cinematic hero. Rick Deckard in Blade Runner, a performance that blurred the lines between man and machine. Each role spoke to a different generation, and together they formed a body of work that will stand as long as film itself. Even in his later years, Ford defied expectations, returning to his most beloved roles while proving that age could never strip away charisma or screen presence. But as fans reflect on his contributions, a different story has emerged, one not written in box office numbers or critical acclaim, but in the quiet devotion of his personal life. In the shadow of his diagnosis, people have begun to see Harrison Ford not only as a Hollywood giant, but as a husband, father, and man whose greatest success was not his career, but his family. For Callista Flockhart, this has always been the truth. She knew him not as the swashbuckling adventurer or space smuggler, but as a man who enjoyed reading quietly, flying his planes, and sitting with his family away from the noise of the world. As her husband's health declines, Callista has taken on a role she never sought, the guardian of his legacy. Friends close to the couple say she is determined to ensure that Harrison's story is told not just through his films, but through the love and dignity with which he lived his final years. She wants their son, Liam, to remember not only his father's fame, but the warmth of his embrace, the wisdom of his words, and the humor that carried him through even the darkest times. It is a responsibility she carries with grace, even as she navigates her own grief. The public, too, has embraced this more personal view of Harrison Ford. Tributes from fans often speak less of movie scenes and more of the impact he had on their lives, the courage they found in his characters, the sense of adventure he inspired, the strength to keep going even when life seemed overwhelming. In many ways, his legacy has transcended cinema. He became a symbol of perseverance, a reminder that even heroes face battles, and that true courage lies not in escaping danger, but in confronting it head-on. Hollywood has already begun to prepare its tributes. Documentaries, retrospectives, and interviews are revisiting his decades-long career, but there is a new tone now, one of reverence and tenderness. Directors and co-stars speak not only of his professionalism, but of his loyalty, his dry wit, and his fierce love for his family. For Callista, these tributes are bittersweet, a reminder of the man the world adores, and the husband she is slowly preparing to let go of. And so, Harrison Ford's legacy is being written in two parallel stories. One belongs to the world, the legendary actor whose films will outlive us all, forever replayed in theaters and living rooms across generations. The other belongs to Callista and their family, the quiet, personal story of a man who loved deeply, lived passionately, and faced his final chapter with dignity. In the end, the diagnosis may mark the closing act of his life, but it does not diminish the power of his story. Harrison Ford will be remembered not just as a hero of the screen, but as a man whose greatest adventure was love itself.